John, what's up, man? Long time in progress. I know we've been working on this for months, but we've known each other for years, and I can't believe this is the first time we're actually recording one of our conversations.
Well, we run into each other at all these places and we have such good conversation. Maybe we've just never felt like we needed to lay one down on tape, huh?
Yeah, I
um,
mean, I guess, but also, as we come into hunting season this year, I know a lot of my audience has seen what I've been able to do over the past, let's see, 4 years. This will be my fourth year hunting, so I'm what do they call them? An adult onset hunter. Uh, and there's so many guys who are like, "Oh, how do I hunt? How do I get into it?" I'm like, "All right, let's get this figured out. Let's bring in some experts. We'll talk about some of this stuff."
yeah, well, as you found out, it's not necessarily the easiest thing to get into, but I think people set their expectations a little unrealistically. I don't want to say too high. I just want to say unrealistically. Um, and we could blame whatever we want in society, but I do think that it's we've seen a surge. Definitely, we've seen a surge in people, new hunters, people becoming curious for lots of different reasons, right? Even people just becoming really interested in organic meat or sustainability of a food source, even if they don't want to hunt. And so it's been amazing to see actually in the last couple of years. And then the pandemic just kind of poured gas on that fire.
How so? How's you're saying that the pandemic has increased the desire for guys to go out and hunt? Is it because of shortages or concerns? Like, what is it that you've seen?
Yeah, so I'm not sure I'm uh, the proper person to ask from a sociological standpoint, but it's not just our business. I work for Sika Gear. It's not just our business. It is everything in the outdoor space has absolutely gone high order.
Hmm.
If you had a product to sell last year, you sold it and you sold out. And if you had a lot of product to sell, then you did very well. I think it's a couple different things. Like I said, I think people were just naturally gravitating towards, healthier food and where does my food come from? And, how do I do this, harvest this organic, sustainable protein? And then all of a sudden, when you did have shortages where you couldn't do things inside, you were almost, forced, so to speak, to go outside and, God forbid, spend time with your family or friends in the great outdoors. Like, I just think I think some things really clicked for people and they really started to begin to figure this out and go, listen, this is a real thing that's been going on, and there's a lot of health benefits outside of the physicality of the hiking, but also the food, like I said, and then the mental aspect. It is, and that has not, Ryan, that has not slowed down in the least, going into the second year of this craziness.
I also think I agree with everything you're saying here, but I also think there's an element of like coolness to hunting too. You have guys like John Dudley, Cam Haines. You've got Joe Rogan, obviously big into hunting. Now you see over the past year and a half, you got guys like Jocko Willink, and so hunting is becoming cool, if that's the right way to look at it. And I think these guys who are very influential have done a good job in promoting the importance of hunting and how to make it more accessible to the layman, to the average guy like myself.
Yeah, so that's absolutely a component of it. I mean, I guess you can't have a conversation nowadays without blaming social media for something,
Right,
um,
right.
but that just with their awareness, and some of those people you mentioned are relatively new to hunting as well, within 3 to 5 years, um, and they have promoted it. They've made it cool. They've made it mainstream, if that's the proper term. But that's where I kind of go back and say, and I'm not faulting those guys at all, or even what myself or my brand does, but the expectations that somebody has are a little they're a little skewed right now because of those people you mentioned and what they do and how it's shown as this, like, tip of the spear iconic thing. um, what they don't see is either people that it took 30 to 35 years to get to that point, or the amazing people like a John Dudley, able to take, say a Jocko Willink, under his wing, if you can imagine that, in a headlock or something, to help them get to that point in a quicker way than the average person can. And so, my concern going forward is managing people's expectations that, they get into this and understand it's a lifestyle, and they should enjoy this journey as they learn and grow and understand and pass it on to their kids, and not get pissed off if they don't kill a giant bull elk in the first, 1, 2, or 3 years, running around public land with a bow in their hand, because there just has to be a level set of expectations. But all in all, though, it's been amazing to see people get into it. And I think if they can manage those expectations, they're going to understand that this is a real lifestyle that has a lot of great benefits to it.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a really good point. And social media, for all its wonderful things, I don't know that you and I would have this conversation if it weren't for the connection on social media, which we've turned into a personal friendship, would happen.
Right.
But also, we see the pictures of the big bull or buck that somebody shot. And, I take Cam Hanes, for example. I think Cam does a tremendous job showing the level of dedication and work and effort that goes on behind the scenes. John Dudley, I've known him for 2 or 3 years. I know you guys are close personal friends, and he illustrates all of the hours and hours and countless practice and product development and product research. But really what the consumer gets is, well, I got to go out and shoot that big buck. I know, for example, with me, I joke with all my friends, I've got a hunt coming up in Minnesota. I've aptly named my bow the Lady Killer, because anytime I see a buck, anything with horns or antlers, I shit my pants and completely lose all of my composure. And so I can kill does all day long. I can't kill anything with antlers, but that's not the picture that I'm going to post. And that's not the picture that is going to get all the likes and the attention. Right.
Yeah. I've gotten several stories just in the last couple of weeks. I was reading some of them on IG today about, folks going out and having these amazing adventures, just amazing. They didn't say it, but I think they're probably somewhat life-changing for them. They just probably can't grasp it at the moment. And they're having these, these just awesome, adventures and having these bonding experiences with their friend. And then they're like, either, they say, well, I didn't kill a buck, or, hey, I killed a small bull. And I always make it a point to, because I'm stoked for them, like, congratulate them, and you're doing the right things, and you're going the right direction. And then I say, listen, don't let anybody tell you or give you shit about the size of any animal you killed or the sex of the animal. It is actually inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. It is that, one, you accomplish all these other things leading up to that, and then you were able to, make a clean harvest. You've got all this meat. Like, yes, we in the industry, in the hunting industry, we like to celebrate larger animals. There's a lot of reasons for that, but I wonder sometimes if we're almost doing a disservice to the folks starting out, because they set that bar, they see that bar set so high. But like in my personal experience, like I've been doing this 37 years, and I like to say I'm a self-taught, archery hunter with varying levels of experience, depending on where I was living, the life, the life challenges I had at the time, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I'm not, nobody before social media ever went out of their way to show you pictures of small animals they shot. Right. And so nobody wants to show you on social media, but that's really inconsequential to the aspect of the hunt. Like, everybody's got to go do it for themselves. And like, I'm just as excited for a guy who goes out and kills a cow elk as I am for the guy, who went out and killed the big deer. And honestly, if the guy who killed the cow elk, like, worked for it and earned it and struggled and suffered and all this stuff to get that cow elk, and the guy that shot the big buck literally just bumbled outside the tent door and shot it, 100 yards away, like, he actually lost out, I think, on the experience, not the guy who went through the whole process.
I mean, look, I wouldn't be opposed to something like that, but
absolutely not.
But there also is a tremendous sense of satisfaction that comes with the intrinsic value of the hunt, not necessarily the harvest or the kill that it all culminates to.
it's just one way of measuring the success of a hunt, but there's lots of others, and I don't think a lot of people talk about the others. And I just think that as more and more, what did you call it? Adult onset hunters,
Yeah, adult
kind of,
onset hunting. Yeah,
yeah, something like that, come into this. It's like just trying to manage and level set expectations. And those animals will happen over time. I almost feel sorry for the, because over the last couple of years, I know people, even younger kids, gone out and killed this huge buck or huge bull their first or second year. And I'm like, I almost feel sorry for them because they have no idea the struggle that they're going to be in a dry spell now for a very long time.
totally. My
Um,
son, he last year we took him out. I know you know Kip Fulks, and so
oh
Kip was
yeah.
gracious enough to have us come out to his property in PA, and my two oldest sons and I went out there. Long story short, my oldest son shot his first deer, and it's this really nice, mature 6 point PA whitetail, just a rad first deer. And he likes to bust my balls about like, Dad, I've shot a bigger buck than you've ever shot. And it's funny. Like I like the banter. There's of course it's just fun, right? Between guys. But also in my heart, I know that over the next several years, he's going to compare everything to that first hunt and think that
Absolutely.
it should just work out like that because isn't that how it works? And the answer is no, it just doesn't work out like that.
Yeah, yeah, no, not all the time, but it's awesome. I mean, just overall, just seeing that the influx of new people, and like I said, it hasn't gone away this year, and we don't see it going away in the foreseeable future. So I think that's a good thing. I think there's been some good, call it silver linings, that have come out of all this craziness. But that's one of them. If people can understand that going outside and run around the mountains or the woods is a great healthy thing, and get out in front of some computer screen, I think that's all positive.
Absolutely. Well, you said another thing too. You said there's a disservice to new hunters, guys getting into it. And I agree with that. But there's also a disservice to those who don't like hunting or see it as some sort of immoral act, in that what they catch a glimpse of is the grips and grins, right? And I don't have any problem with the concept of trophy hunting because I think that means different things to different people. I
Yeah.
don't have anybody I don't have any problem with anybody posting a picture of a nice deer or elk that they shot or any other species, because to me, I look at it and think, well, I know what that guy went through to some degree to get that. But from somebody who's looking in, who doesn't like hunting or is a vegan or thinks it's immoral, then I think the hunting industry and world gets a bad rap simply because we're focused on all of the kills as opposed to the process and the honoring of wildlife and the connection with nature and everything you can't really capture in an Instagram post.
Yeah, yeah, and that's tough to do, and I think as an example, I think Sitka does a pretty good job and has done in the past, and there's some other brands out there that do a good job about um, not your standard grip and grin. They're trying to show other aspects of the hunt. But, to me, the red thread that runs through all of hunting, even if you're, uh, you know, a, a, a vegetarian or, as extreme as a vegan, but any human being on the planet has to eat something, right? So, the food source is really the red thread to me that runs through that. So, the more that people can, show that hunt, and then maybe in the next post after that grip and grin is, that piece of meat on their table, cooked and being consumed by their family or friends, like that cycle of life aspect to it. And, more and more people and organizations are starting to show that, but that's where, as a human being living on this planet, can actually look at that and go, even if I don't want to eat that, I understand that that is the ultimate, end result of this hunting thing, right? So you can't maybe convince them about the camaraderie, or that you stop, stalking in on a big bull to look at the wildflowers, growing out of this dead tree stump, or hear the bird life as it comes, as it starts talking when the sun comes up. That may be difficult, but that food source on the table, and that ultimately this whole endeavor ends at that place. I think that's where you can start to, even if you don't convert them to hunting, that you can at least start to let them see through your eyes that this is more than, this isn't a contact sport, right? Like this is, to me, is a lifestyle. There's no rules, there's no referees, right? I mean, we all have to apply our own, ethics here, even though there's laws. But ultimately, the end result is, or should be, food on the plate. And I think that's where you start to slowly win people over, when you start to show and talk about that as the ultimate goal.
Yes, you're right. And it also takes a level of maturity on both sides of the equation. Those, for example, who are vegetarian or vegan, who have never been introduced, like my mom, for example, she's a vegan, but she's not so insane that she can't see the value in what we're doing, or can't appreciate what we're doing, or can't, or is unwilling to look at the level of respect I have for nature. So that's a level of maturity on her part. But also there's got to be a level of maturity on the hunter side of the equation, in that we are at least maybe somewhat empathetic and understanding of how another person might perceive it, and then try to open that conversation up in a mature way, instead of poking fun at people, or telling them they're dumbasses, and really try to open it up and bring those people to the table, so we can have a mature discussion, and at least at a minimum find some common ground. If not, maybe get some people over to the cause of conservation and everything that we are trying to do outside of just killing an animal.
Yeah, yeah. No, I've actually, in the last 3, 4 years, I've known some vegetarians that have, just kind of come through the orbit, that have come to the point that they wanted to try meat, but not just meat. They wanted to try wild meat.
Mm,
I know some friends in Salt Lake, as an example. They used to be vegetarian, and the reason was not that they were opposed to meat, is that they couldn't get themselves beyond the mental hurdle of the industrial meat complex, right? But once all of a sudden, they went out and they shot some wild birds, and they had somebody cook them. And then, maybe they got a deer, and then somebody showed them how to process it. Now they process, so now they're not vegetarian. They process all their wild meat. They do amazing things with it, and they share it. And now more of their friends come over that may be vegetarians, that they're slowly converting. So again, that food source, that consumption part of it, is a really important component. And we're never gonna, we can never control what other people do, or some of the packaging on like a broadhead, with all the fake blood and all this, what I consider kind of craziness. Um, but I do think it's starting to slowly change, and you get a product like a Traeger pellet grill that is probably like God's gift to wild meat cooking, because it just,
no doubt.
it's like super controlled and super slow, and you could throw the gnarliest bull elk neck on there, and just cook it down into the most tender thing ever. That all that stuff is starting to come to fruition, and it is becoming more mainstream. And then you get more people that are looking at this thing, and depending on who you ask, but hunter numbers seem like they're going up to us now. Maybe they've gone down 10 years ago, and they haven't hit back to historical highs, but they're definitely starting to come back. Everybody can see that in license sales and clothing sales and ammunition sales. But I do think that things are becoming, I don't know if refine's the right word, but maybe more mature is the right word, like you said. So you can have these conversations, you can have somebody over to dinner. But it's been really cool to see, almost on a month-to-month basis. I can kind of see this or play out over time.
I mean, and for you, I mean, not only cool to see, but cool to be, I imagine, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but cool to be a part of. What you're doing, what Sitka is doing with product development isn't just a passive bystander. I mean, you guys are actively involved in making sure that more people can be successful, making sure that people have a good experience. I mean, I reached out to you, it must have been 3 or 4 months ago. And I'm like, man, I've been going on this hunt for like 4 years in Minnesota, and every single year I do it because I enjoy it, but I'm freezing my balls off. And like anybody who wasn't fully committed would say this sucks. And it does suck at times. But you got me hooked up and set up, and I'm like, okay, cool. This is going to make this hunt go better. So you guys are not just passive bystanders. I mean, you're actively engaged in the process of making this more enjoyable for more and more people.
Yeah. So, from the product standpoint, from my standpoint, um, that's another component to it that's super exciting. Like I truly feel that we are building the best outdoor gear available, period, stop, full stop. Like it doesn't matter if now, yeah, we don't build gear for skiing necessarily, and we don't build gear for alpine climbing, but we are building the best outdoor gear you can get. Now, there may be other brands like an Arc'teryx or somebody building just as good a gear, but we are building the best gear with the best ingredients. And I know everybody says that in their marketing department, but um, we really are putting in that effort. We've got that team. We've got that's that skill set. We've got the factories. We've got the ingredients. I like to say we scratch make the biscuit. We don't like to just pull something off the shelf in some Asian factory and put a logo and a camel pattern on it. But it's gotten to the point now where, and I can't mention any names, but it would floor you if I told you some of the names of people from outside the hunting industry, from the skiing industry, the climbing industry, the mountain biking crowd that are very big names. You would never consider them as a hunter that are starting to be attracted to this thing. And there's a couple reasons. So there's the component we already talked about, which is the food source, this organic thing, right? This sustainable protein. So that's a component, but also that hunting is becoming, at least mountain hunting is becoming this thing you do at a certain part of the year, right? So if I walk into the mountains in January with a pair of skis or snowboard under my arm, and then in the spring I walk out there with a fly rod in my hand, and then in the summer I go out there with a mountain bike under my seat, and then in the fall I go out there with a bow or rifle. Like it's just what you do in the mountains, right? And so it becomes this lifestyle. But one of the hangups has always been, well, I don't want to wear this awesome gear for 9 months out of the year and then have to put this, traditionally like shit hunt stuff on my body. And people just didn't want to do it. Whereas, some of these technical clothing systems that Sitka and some other brands are building have finally, like, they're kind of like the final part of the bridge to bring people over. It's like, well, they wanted to do it, but it always had this kind of like quote Bubba mentality. And then now the mountain hunting's becoming cool, and now the gear's getting to the point that it's there, and now people are becoming more aware of the food source. I'm telling you, the gravitational pull of this thing is we're not even. I don't even think we can comprehend right now how powerful that draw is to pull people into this universe.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I also think that the pattern, although important, and I know you guys have done a lot of research that goes into the pattern and everything else, the pattern of the camo is important. But I think more importantly than that is probably the systems that you've created, which transcend hunting. It goes into outdoor survival.
Yeah.
It goes into cold weather climate. It goes into mountaineering, all of these other aspects of being outdoors. And it doesn't necessarily have to culminate into you shooting an animal. It could be just you experiencing nature in a different way.
Yeah, and the camos, the camo's a component of it. I like to say that, if you're looking for every advantage you can get, every legal advantage, then camo is definitely going to help. I've definitely been able to get away with, either skirting past animals or getting a shot because the camo gave me that extra couple seconds that I needed. But you certainly don't need to wear it. But to your point, we like to focus on the hunt. We like to focus on the shot, the kill. But what so many people kind of forget about is you're out there. Some people could be out there for years and never get a shot. On average, you're out there 90% of the time you're walking around looking for the animal, and then 10% of the time is actually in the process of trying to move in, kill it, and get it out of the field. But the whole time you're out there, you're exposed to the elements. You have to manage I like to say, the care and feeding of yourself. And so that's where these these technical products come in, these clothing systems and everything that kind of these ancillary products that go around that has made the experience better for everybody. It's made it, I mean, in some regard, it's made a little, I'll say more efficient. I won't say easy, but it's made it more efficient to go out there, have fun. You know, if you get a little wet, you know, you can dry off, right? If you get a little cold, you know, you can warm up. And so you're not going to die. And so you can go out there and have these kind of grand adventures and still keep it relatively, you know, manageable.
What do you say though to the guy? I mean, look, if somebody's listening to this and they're like, yeah, I want to get into hunting and I got to go out and buy a bow and I'm going to spend anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 to get dialed in. I got to get a gun. Now I got to get some camo, and Sitka's not the least expensive, clearly.
Yep.
I mean, at some point it becomes very cost prohibitive. So, you know, how does that align with your mission to introduce this arena and this world to people who have never been introduced to it when they start seeing price tags of all of the stuff they need to get in order to have some success in the field?
So the first thing I tell people is you don't need to buy the best of everything to go and start this kind of journey, right? To have this experience, you don't need to buy, you know, the $10,000 or the $5,000 or the $2,000 rifle or the $2,000 bow or the full set of Sitka. I could pick a bow up that I've got in my barn from 20 years ago, and it killed elk then, and it'll kill elk today. It just will, right? But hey,
I gotta say something on that one, okay? Because I made a mistake early on. I bought the Pro Defiant by Hoyt. That was
yep.
my first bow. And I love that bow and I shot so well with it. And then next year they came out and they're like, well, now here's the RX1 and and then I'm like, oh, cool. I'll sell this Pro Defiant and I'll get the RX1. And ever since that minute I sold that Pro Defiant, I have regretted it. I'm like,
Yep.
man, I wish I would have just kept that bow. But I got into the trap of like, oh, the iPhone 17 Plus Pro package is here. And so I got to buy that. And what's the difference? Nothing. There's no difference between this and last year.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've got a Pro Defiant and it's awesome and I use it for certain things, but you don't need that. You don't need that. I mean, I got a friend who kills giant bulls every year and he hasn't bought a new bow in 8 years. Right. But my point is you don't have to have the best of everything, but you should start to prioritize. So, you know, like I said, no matter what, you're going to be running around the mountains or sitting in a tree and exposing yourself to elements. Like, you should have just a solid idea of what a good clothing system's all about. I get people all the time and they're like, hey, I'd really like to buy a Sitka X or Y, but I don't have enough money to buy everything. What do you think? And I say, hey, if you've got just some solid base layers, I don't care from what brand it is, and you have, you know, a decent puffy jacket, like, yeah, buy a pair of pants, try one of our jackets, and just start to slowly build something and figure it out on your own. But I think so many people like feel this barrier of entry on the gear is so big a hurdle that they won't take the leap. And I was like, listen, you don't need to do it all in 1 year. You certainly, I don't recommend going out in the mountains in October and wearing a pair of blue jeans and cowboy boots. Like, that to me doesn't seem very reasonable. But, you know, buy a pair of soft shell pants and a pair of hiking boots, and maybe the rest you can kind of cobble together. Also, maybe don't go out for 5 days living out of a backpack. How about hunting from your truck from the trailhead? And if you do get in trouble, you can come right back within a few hours, you know, or a cycle of daylight, and just kind of start like that. And again, that rifle your granddad had, that 270 that killed deer, is, if you have access to that, is probably going to be still a lethal weapon that you can pick up and kill the deer with. And then, you know, if you figure it out and you like it and you want to keep doing it, then slowly invest in purchasing a better weapon. But, you know, all the brands, and if clearly I work for one, like they want to sell stuff. I get it. But it can also be intimidating for people because they see the price tag and it's like, you don't need to spend that much. What I like to say, knowledge weighs nothing and costs very little, right? And so if you educate yourself, and figure out what you want, and then slowly over time kind of invest and cobble together a system. But that doesn't mean you have to wait to go hunt or run around the mountains. Just slowly build your adventures along with your experience and your gear, and then eventually you'll get where you want to go. And I think what I think, and I get it, not in hunting, but in some other things I've done, is when you start a little later in life, you feel like you have to like make a big leap to catch up, right? For all those
Definitely.
lost years. And you can to a point, but you also need to enjoy the journey a little bit, right? And just kind of, it's easier said than done, but just kind of pace yourself and don't think that if you're not killing bull elk with a bow your first or second or third year that you're somehow some failure or doing something wrong. And that was kind of what I talked about or kind of referenced earlier, Ryan. It's like guys will ask me, they're like, hey, I'm coming out and I want to go hunt elk, right? What do you think? And I ask them a series of questions, but I'm like, hey, what I'd recommend is, how about you come out here in the spring, bring your family, go fishing, and maybe buy a cheaper black bear tag and run around these mountains. And one, see if you like it. Two, you could have a grand adventure with the black bear. And three, you could scout for elk and then maybe come out for elk. Or how about buying an antelope tag, which is much easier to get, much less expensive. The odds of success are far greater. The meat is amazing, right? How about doing that and not have to worry about getting an 800-pound animal out of grizzly bear country, by yourself, and then slowly work into it? Or how about going upland hunting or going turkey hunting, or sitting in that whitetail stand? There's all these facets of hunting that are so awesome that just lend themselves to each other and like build this whole collective experience. And it's not just this tier one tip of the spear, hardest freaking thing in hunting to do, which in my opinion is bow hunting elk on public land, but that's what everybody wants to do. Um, and so and I'm not discouraging, but what I'm saying is there's a lot of other awesome adventures. Like for the price of a bull elk tag in Montana, you could come out here in the spring and hunt black bear and turkey, and come out in the fall and hunt antelope, and get 2 or 3 hunts under your belt for the price of one bull elk, and your odds of success go exponentially higher, and build experience that way, and then go, you know what, I think I'm ready to pull the trigger now, figuratively, of course, on that bull elk tag.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I know earlier in the year, so I went to Hawaii with some buddies of mine, and we hunted axis deer, and they were
Awesome,
everywhere.
awesome.
So many deer around, and so we had so many looks and so many opportunities. And then when we got done on the island of Molokai, I went over and spent some time on the Big Island with my family, and I visited a friend of mine, and he's got access to some lands there, and we hunted goats on the lava beds on the Big Island. And one of the things he said is because I missed a couple of shots that were shots I should have made for various reasons that I'll save that for another day. Um, and he said, Ryan, because I was discouraged, he's like, the best thing about being out here is you get so many reps. Like you'll get so many reps out here relative to a guy that's going to go on a Colorado or a Montana elk hunt, just like you're saying right now. But I
Yeah.
think one of the biggest problems, though, is somebody who's listening to what we're saying right now, who wants to get into it, doesn't even know any better. Like they don't know any of those hunts are going to be more likely of success than an elk hunt. All they know is what they see on the gram. So, like, how do you start to get this information of where to go, what's going to be a high probable or successful hunt, and what isn't?
Well, so the when I don't want to say my generation, but I can't really think of any other term. Like a lot of folks my age, so I'm early 50s, like we grew up and our parents taught us, right? Or our grandparents taught us like how to hunt. And it was just part of the family. Now I didn't necessarily, but I met other people. And so hunting, like a few other things that I've done, so alpine climbing, backcountry skiing, like it really helps to have mentors. And it's almost like this grassroots mentorship, uh, societal thing that helps. Hey man, I'll take you out. I'll show you where to go. I'll show you the ropes. I'll walk you through your first shot at an animal, kind of thing. And I don't know how you kind of manage that, but that's what hunting was, and I think still should be, because it is tough to learn, right? That like it's a steep learning curve. But so I think part of that is, me, you, these platforms, all these other people, that are trying not to sell something, but just trying to provide knowledge can help spread that word, right? Hawaii is an amazing opportunity for lots of reasons. So first of all, bow hunting axis deer is graduate level. If you ask
It's
me,
insane.
I've
It
missed
was
I've
insane.
missed lots and lots of axis deer, but you bring up an awesome point, and I think it was underlying to some other points I made, but I didn't say it. And it is about this getting reps, right? So either being in front of an animal and seeing what you can get away with on a stalk, or being in front of an animal and getting a shot, right? And working through your process. And, hopefully you make a clean shot, but maybe you miss. But there's so many guys that I've dealt with just because I'm in the industry that, they're like, oh yeah, I've never hunted X or Y, and I want to go do this. And then they go and I'm like, hey, how'd it go? And they're like, oh yeah, we saw lots of animals, but I just passed them all because I didn't find a giant. And I'm
Mm.
like, man, you missed a golden opportunity to, one, get your rep, right? Get a rep in, drawing your bow, shooting your rifle, stalking the animal, but you also miss the opportunity to get that wild meat, right? Which is so critical. And so I just encourage people. I'm like, go and get your reps in. And so places like Hawaii, turkey, right? Shooting turkey with the bow or even a shotgun, like, uh, you know, uh, go hunt pigs in Texas. Like, there's all these amazing opportunities that are outside of the core hunting season where people can go get reps, work through their process so that when the bull walks in front of them, they don't come completely unglued. I mean, last year, this guy, I won't mention his name, of course, but he was a really good shot. He's a really good shot on the range, and he's gone to Hawaii and he has harvested some axis deer. And so, he went elk hunting. And the first time a bugling bull came in front of him and stopped at 30 yards, he whiffed
Mm.
completely by 6 feet. And he couldn't figure it out. And he's like, oh, my bow, my bow, my bow. And we just kept telling him, it's like, it's not your bow, it's you. Like, this is a monumental thing. I mean, the only thing, comparative is if, a caveman's hunting a T-Rex with a spear. Like, this is, this is not a common thing for a human being to do nowadays. And so the more you can become around those animals and other animals and get those reps in and get that experience, the better off you're going to be when you do get, the $1,000 elk tag in Utah, and you maybe only get one shot over the course of 2 or 3 weeks. Like, you've got dozens of shots and quite a few years leading up to that one experience that will hopefully make you successful, as opposed to like, man, because the Graham's gonna, they're gonna judge me if I don't do that. I'm like, forget about them. Like, it
Yeah.
has nothing to do with them. But unfortunately, that kind of factors in. It's just where we are in society. But yeah, Hawaii's awesome. That axis deer, it's either the best or the second best wild game I've ever had in my life. The
What's
only
the
one I would
first?
so the only one I would put it up against is August blacktail on Kodiak Island.
Okay.
August blacktail, they're up there, they're up high, they're eating all these berries. They're just amazing, amazing, wonderful animals to eat. And they're good year round, or not year round, but throughout the season, but August specifically. But axis deer, no matter when it seems like you harvest them, like, they're just good no matter what. So I'd probably put that number one and blacktail number two in my book. But it's just, the table fare is unbeatable.
Oh, it was amazing. I mean, we were fortunate between all of us to be able to harvest some axis deer. And I mean, it was delicious. But, going back to the point that you made earlier about what kind of animal and what kind of hunt, one of the most favorite hunts or memorable hunts for me was last year it was literally in my backyard. We've got 50 acres out here. My son and I were actually about to do a podcast, and we looked out this window over here to my right, and we saw a herd of turkey. So I'm like, forget about the podcast. So we got in my truck and we drove down the road and tried to head them off. And we sat in where we thought they were going to come through. They saw us. And so they booked it the other way. So I got back in my truck with my son, drove to the other end of the property where I knew they would be coming through. And I'm like, all right, bud, just sit right here. And I'm going to be about 20 yards behind you and just hang, like, we'll just wait. And we waited for probably a half hour or so. And those turkeys came right in and he blasted one. It was his first turkey and it was a little hen. And in the season, so that would have been fall of last year. So the way that we can harvest is each of us can shoot, if I remember correctly, up to 5 turkeys, any age, any sex in the fall hunt, not the spring hunt, but the fall hunt.
Yep.
And so he blasted this small hen and I was so proud of him. And we brought it up to the house, which was, 200 yards from where we shot it. And we broke it down right there. And it was enough for like 3/4 of one meal to feed my family. So even though we didn't get as much as maybe we would have liked, it was the best meal. Maybe not the best, but it was the most memorable meal
There you
that I
go.
can actually remember. It was like, he was so proud. He broke it down. He shot it. We put in the work. We had the experience together. And so, yeah, it wasn't some trophy. We didn't stuff the thing. We don't have anything mounted. We have a couple of pictures and a memory of a dinner we had. And that was the best.
Yep. But you're tapping into that primal DNA that I think we all have, right? But to be able to do that, on your property with your son, feed your family, like that is far bigger an experience than what, if it was a big tom or a small hen, it doesn't matter. Like at that point, it's almost inconsequential, right? And the next time he'll go shoot a bigger turkey to feed the whole family, right? But like that's, I don't know, circle of life to me is a cool part. Like, listen, I want to go and kill the most mature animal I can,
Right.
because I've been doing it so long that I'm not so good, but I don't want to just go shoot anything because the hunt will be over too soon. And so I'm like, listen, I want to try to hunt the harder to get to animals, right? And the size of the rack or the bear or whatever, like it's secondary to the challenge, but ultimately at the end of the hunt, I want to bring meat home, and like I want to have that in my freezer, and like I just walk around feeling like I am, a part of this you know uh I don't know, Homo sapien lineage, right? Or human lineage on this planet, that I'm able to do something that we've done for a very long time. And to me, ultimately, like that's a cool thing. Like I'm proficient, I'm skilled, I'm a provider, right? Like all those things are super, super important to me. And yeah, if I have a big, elk rack to look at and remind me of that trophy and motivate me, but it also allows me to kind of measure up where my skills are against that, that animal or mother nature, right? So as you progress, I think that's a natural thing, but ultimately it's like that provider part of it, and like building those skills and measuring yourself against that, to me is, that's what I work all year for. Like that's the motivation for me to do all these other things all year, so that I'm really good in that kind of clutch moment of truth.
I'm actually glad that you brought up being able to have the mount or the rack. I mean, you've got some there behind you, like I've
Yeah.
got some here behind me. And so people look at it from the outside looking in and they think, well, that's barbaric and those are trophies. And, I guess maybe you could say they're trophies. To me, it's an indicator of something that went well. I had success. I worked for it. I trained for it. So I guess technically you can consider it a trophy, but more than anything, like this is a sheep that I shot in Hawaii. That's my very first deer that I shot in Texas. That reminds me of the memories. That reminds me of the hard work, the effort, the experience, the fact that I was willing to go out and do it. So there's so much more than just this concept of killing an animal and putting its head on the wall. Like that's the least of it.
That's absolutely the least of it. And these animals I have back here, I mean, some of them are fairly large, and some of them aren't, but like it's nobody's damn business. Like it's so personal to me. Like when I look at these things in my office, and I only have them in my office, they're nowhere else in my house. Like they are personal to me, and the memories and the feelings they instill and like bring back, like, that's what I have. I don't have the photo album. I have these things, and every one of them, I could tell you the exact story and who I was with and what happened, and, or how I almost died, or whatever it is, and And so some of them are special, and I decide to kind of take that next step. But that is not, I don't know, it's not the measure of the hunter necessarily. I know some people will make it that. But there's so many other things that go into it. But these are things that we don't talk about, right? And so if you only look at Instagram and you're new to hunting, like, you feel like you're inadequate and not good if you can't, shoot something like you got behind you, or something I have behind me. And that's just not the case. It's just not the case at all.
Yeah, it really, I want to go back to what we were talking about, because this is really important. Because again, I know I'm going to get so many questions from guys who hear this and are inspired by what we're talking about and want to go do it. And I really like the concept that you talked about, where you were talking about mentorship and how this stuff is passed down. There's one element that everybody needs to be aware of as well, and that's initiative. Like I could ask. In fact, I had this experience just recently. I could ask 10 guys to go on a hunt with me. Hey guys, I've got this hunt lined up. It's going to be in 3 months. Here it is. Here's what we're doing. And you know how many of those 10 guys will go? 2, maybe.
Yeah.
The other 8 will come up with all the reasons, some legitimate, some not. Oh, my wife, oh, my kids, oh, this, oh, my work, oh, my business. And so we come up with all these excuses. And then the guys who don't come say, oh man, I really wish I could have gone. Well, yeah, you could have gone, but you made a choice. And it's the same thing with these guys who say, hey, Ryan, I really want to get into hunting. How do I start? And I say, well, go find a friend who hunts. Well, I have this friend, but I'm busy that time of year. Okay, well, that's the choice you're making. And so live with it, or make a different choice. But if you really want to get involved in something, whether it's hunting or jujitsu or starting a podcast or whatever, like, some of it is on you to take some initiative to go out there and get what you want.
Yeah. I think some of it is people are scared to do hard things. I think people are scared to get out of their comfort zone and maybe feel, some pain or discomfort. To me, I have to have that in my life to be a good human being. Like, elk hunting is example. So I just got done with 20 days of elk hunting. I'm still not done in Montana, but I need that in my life. I need that in my life to be a good person, a good employee. I mean, my wife and I have been married 30 years today. Like, to be a good husband, like, I need that. She knows that, but that's not what I do. That's not all I do. I do this all year round with a lot of different things. And, like, to me, it's just the way I live my life. Right. And so this is one way of expressing that. When I go run around the mountains with the bow in my hand, I'm not always successful, but that doesn't mean I'm not successful in the harvest, but that doesn't mean I'm not successful in the hunt. Right. But I think people are, especially if they don't have that mentorship, they don't know. Some people don't know if they can kill an animal. They don't know if they want to be around a firearm. They don't know if they're going to be scared if they, get 50 yards from a black bear in the woods. Like, but that's the grand adventure, man. Like, that's what people really need to be tapped. I think if more of us tapped into it, not everybody's cut out for it, but I think if more of us tap into it, I think the rewards you would find are well exceed any discomfort or time away from home that you have to spend to get it. It's just and that's why I'm excited that more and more people are starting to at least look at going and doing it, because it can be this life-changing thing for people. You'll look at the world completely different. You'll never go out in
100%.
the woods, even if you go to Yellowstone and observe wildlife, the way you will, and the things you will see when you are out hunting. It's unbelievable, the things I've seen. I mean, I'll tell you a story real quick. But this last week we were hunting, and this elk came across in front of us. We kind of went up into the trees because they were bugling, and we were going to go up and then move left. We came up, and this bull's coming across from the right. We can hear him. We couldn't see him. So sure enough, I see his antlers, and boom, he's 20 yards in front of us off to our right. So we get down on our knees right on a trail. We're just sitting there. Bull bugles, and then he drops down 5 yards closer to us, still off to our right. He looks around, he bugles again. So, I mean, just that alone, right, is amazing. So then he's got a decision to make. The bull can either go across the mountain, which is what we assumed he would do, or he could start to come downhill towards us. And all of a sudden, he just turns and starts trotting right down at us, full size mature bull elk. And me and the guy are like on our knees, just not sure what to do, thinking that the elk's going to see us and turn and run. And he doesn't. And at 1 yard, 3 feet, we both bail off to our right into this dead pine tree laying on the ground. The bull sees that. He puts on the brakes in this really dark, loamy dirt, pivots, and I can still see like all the muscles in his back and neck, like flexing, throws dirt all over us as we lay on the ground, runs 20 yards away from us, stops broadside, and puts out another bugle, still really not knowing what had happened. And, I tell this story and people are like, man, did you shoot the bull? Did you shoot the bull? And I'm like, no, I didn't shoot the bull. One, I was thinking about other things, but two, I was so mesmerized by this experience and like having this magnificent animal that close. Like I could have walked away from that hunt fully satisfied. Right. But like, you'd never have that crazy experience if you weren't out there chasing these wild animals around the mountains. Right. So it's like, man, that was worth the price of admission right there. Like the only way I get closer is one of them touches me. Right. Like I get to count coup on one and like touch it and then run away. Like that's the only way. Like that's the bar I've set for myself now. So it's just awesome.
Well, enough. It's cool to even just swap stories, to hear stories like this. Like I remember a buddy of mine and I and his brother were hunting turkeys, and we're sitting there kind of hunkered down trying to call some turkeys in, and he's in a bush, and no shit, this doe walks straight up to him, and I'm kind of looking over at him and he doesn't move. And this doe was inches from his face sniffing him. And I'm over there, me and his brother are sitting there like trying not to laugh. And he's sitting there trying not to laugh. Man, just like stories like that, I think are so amazing. And like you said, you're just never going to get it if you don't show some initiative. But there's also really non-threatening ways to do it. I had a guy years ago, a friend of mine, he drew out a special tag, and it was in my neck of the woods. And I called him up. I'm like, hey man, I don't have a tag. I'm not hunting. I know you're hunting down here. Can I come help you look for deer? That's it. Yeah. Like, I want to come camp with you and spend some time with you, and I'll help you spot some deer, and like, maybe we'll get something. And I could only go out there, if I remember, for 2 days. So 1 night and 2 days. And I went out there and we didn't end up harvesting anything. He did a couple of days later after I had left. But that was a really non-threatening, easy way for me to go on a hunt, to experience it, to get the camaraderie, to get some reps or some experience under my belt without having to have a tag, all the equipment, all the gear, not having the bow or the rifle. Again, initiative. You just got to go put yourself in the environment.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know I don't mean it to sound too spiritual, but like when you go out there, if you harvest anything or not, if you go out there and you start observing wildlife, like I truly feel like I'm more interconnected to this planet, like, because these things are happening if I'm there or not. Right. And then I know they're happening. I've gotten to observe it. Like I've been so, like blessed to have seen some of that stuff and all that, and then to feed my family with it. Like, listen, it's not the only thing I do all year, but it's a huge part of my life to be able to have that and experience it. And then, like you said, like that sharing, like, yeah, come along, like, let's go. Even if you don't have a tag, like you can still go experience that or share that with other people. So it can be a very powerful thing in somebody's life for sure.
So what is your background? I mean, obviously you've been in the hunting arena and world, and you work with Sitka. You've been doing this for a long time, but your background is with cold exposure and surviving the elements. I know you were in the Navy. And so like, how did it go from that to what you're doing now with Sitka? I'm really curious about that process for you.
Yeah. So I was in the Navy for 26 years. 20 of those years I worked with the SEAL teams, teaching them diving at first, which was kind of my formal training. And then as I was, kind of going through my Navy career, I got assigned to a SEAL team. I was trying to get some professional mountain guide qualifications because maybe I was going to get out and go do that.
Now, anyways, you're not a SEAL, correct?
No, but I was assigned to them for 20 years. It's kind of
a
rare.
How does that? I know I'm really curious about how that works.
Well, let's just say that one of the strengths that the SEAL teams has is if you have something to offer them, they will take it, right? And
Got
so
it.
I had something. I had a lot of diving experience, and I was able to leverage that to help them with their combat swimming, is what they called it. And then
Okay.
with these set of skills I had built in the mountains, through some circuitous circumstances, I started training some platoons. This was pre 9/11. In what we called cliff assault, which is basically rock climbing at night with guns. Um, and then when 9/11 happened, and we realized that, we had to go into the Hindu Kush of Afghanistan and fight. We didn't have the training, we didn't have the equipment. I mean, this is just fact.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to figure it out. And we had to figure it out really fast. And so I was at a SEAL team at the time, and had been there quite a while. And whatever, a couple days after 9/11, I was called and said, "Hey," guy said, "Hey, I'm handpicking a team of guys to go up to Alaska and build out this training, to get guys into Afghanistan the first year. And you're on the list, and we want you to come up." And 30 days later, I was up there.
Wow.
That's kind of what really blew up, you know, uh, all this for me. And over the next X number of years, 13, 14 years, it was not only developing equipment with high-end outdoor brands, but also taking that equipment then and figuring out a training curriculum, then applying it, and not only teaching ourselves, but then teaching students. You'd see how the students would take that knowledge on, how they would digest it. You'd go back and modify either the training curriculum and or the equipment over time. And so this big like feedback loop started to run. And that's where we really started to become, really capable mountain fighters, to be able to go there and kind of meet those guys on their own terms. But ultimately what that did is it was this training and experience and pedigree that it gave me that was just kind of unfounded in the world. And so I knew when I retired that I wanted to work in an industry I was passionate about. Everything I'd done in my life up to that point was, I was just living my dream, right? Like it was everything I wanted to do. There were no days off, so to speak, for me, because I just loved it so much. And I got this job with Sitka, right? And I was the first, what they call big game product manager. So what does that mean? Well, big game hunting is essentially, elk, mule deer, all that, sheep, all those things, goats, mountain goats. But to me, there was no difference between what we had done in the military, uh, going into the mountains with, a camera or a sniper rifle or whatever it was, right? And going into the mountains with a bow or a hunting rifle. There were all those similarities. It would the clothing was the same. The tech, the not the technique, but the clothing were the same. The foundational principles were the same. The way you applied the gear was a little different, but for the most part, living out in weather is living out in weather, right? And so being capable and ready when the opportunity presented, whatever that opportunity was, militarily or hunting wise, it all dovetailed to me. And so when I got the job, it was just an amazing opportunity because the founder and I are just very much aligned, and we've got mutual friends, some guys from the teams, and I just been able to run with it. And like I said, I think we're building world class product now, and it's not just built from a point of sale. It's built with all this experience that myself and the team has brought to go, listen, this is founded on 30 years of experience. Like these you don't have to like our stuff, and maybe you don't want to afford our stuff, but like you can't say that our stuff isn't rock solid and performs to what it says it does, because we've got this experience behind it and we go and use it. So that's a little different. I don't want to burst anybody's bubble, but that's a little different than some of these brands where it's really just theory that plays itself out in a product that sells something, right? And so
I mean, I
anyways,
even
that's what
think
I
it's,
brought to the table.
I even think it's a little bit, even, I would say less than that. I mean, we live in this world that's so commoditized, right? And so you said it earlier, I could go to Asia somewhere and talk with a manufacturer and say, oh, okay, well, here's your pattern. Cool. Well, here's my camo pattern, and not have any thought or anything research, data, or proven success in the field, and say, hey, just slap this camo on that jacket, and it's commoditized, and I could sell it. I can make a lot of money doing that for sure.
Yeah.
Like, I have no
Yep.
doubt.
Yep.
But it isn't
Absolutely.
going to work the way that ultimately people of that value like real tools and equipment is going to work.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, um, and listen, it's not just me, it's this whole team of people we have, but I use the gear, we use the gear. I'm out there in the elements. I'm not going to make something that I'm not going to personally use. And so I just told you the experience I had. So that's what I bring to the table. I don't know if I should, but I take it personal. Like the stuff I do, I work on, like I take it personal. I think the team takes it personally because we use it. Like we trust our lives with it. And we've got all this experience to kind of back it up. And listen, I'm not saying every other brand out there doesn't, but we have a very unique set of talented people that work there, and I would put that gear up against anything in the world right now. Strip the camo pattern off of it. It is the best outdoor technical gear that I think money can buy. And if you hunt or hike or camp or backpack or do whatever you do, that gear's still going to keep you warm, dry, and alive if you need it to.
It's always interesting because I run across those guys and you kind of admire them. They're kind of like the rogue John Wayne types. We see our grandfathers, they'll go out into the woods with their Red Wings and their denim and their flannel jacket, and they'll go, shoot these big animals. And you're like, man, I can't even do it in all this gear, let alone what you
Oh, I
can.
know. No, I honestly, I like those guys too. And
For sure.
I'll get that question. I'll be like, well, my granddad or my father,
Yes.
went out in Wranglers and I'm like, yeah, he did. Right. He did. But there's more to the story than that. So part of it is just generationally, they were a little tougher as a
No
whole.
doubt. No doubt.
But, the other part of that is when your granddad got his blue jeans covered in snow and that flannel was frozen over, he had to stop hunting and go back to the fire,
Mm.
right? Whereas I could be out there running around. I've got a half to 2/3 less weight on my body. I'm hunting a little differently. I'm not saying more efficiently, but I'm hunting differently. And if I get wet, if I get trapped in a snowstorm, I go back, I get in the sleeping bag, I dry out, and I'm out there the next day. Granddad probably didn't do that. Also, there were a lot more animals running around the woods and a lot less people. So you generally probably didn't have to spend as much time hunting, pecking around, looking for it. But ultimately, why would you want to go and kick your own ass and wear denim and flannel if you don't have to nowadays? And so, listen, if you want to, I fully encourage you to do that. I know like up in Maine, right? Like there's people that run around in that thicker wool and it
Oh
works. Like
yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
saying you shouldn't do that. What I espouse is whatever you choose to wear, understand its limitations and how to use it. And it's up to you. Like I'm not going to make that personal choice for you, but I know that there's stuff out there now that's super lightweight, super performance oriented, will keep you warm, will dry out when it gets wet incredibly fast. And so your safety margin, I think, goes up. Um, and your chances of success also go up because of that. So
Well, and look, I'll be real frank with you. When it comes to the differences between me and you, I'm significantly more of a casual hunter than you are. And so if I'm going to go out, like I want to be comfortable. I want to stay in the field. I want to increase my chances of success. I don't need to make it any harder than it needs to be, especially where I'm at right now. And so if this keeps me in the field longer, it keeps me in the game longer, it makes it more enjoyable. Like,
absolutely.
here's another great example. My 13-year-old, he loves hunting more than I do. He's way more into it than I am. But the last couple of years, it's been a battle to keep him in the game mentally when we're sitting in a blind for 2 or 3 hours. And if
Mm-hmm.
I have some equipment, whether it's clothing or the equipment that we have, or even just something to distract him periodically, then you bet your butt I'm going to use that stuff because that's going to keep us out there and give us more reps, like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You listen, you want to go out and enjoy yourself. Like you're going out there for a specific reason. Part of it is you're trying to enjoy yourself. And if you've got a week off of vacation, you're going to take it away from your family. You're going to spend some money. Like ultimately you want to try to do what you can to be as successful as you can be. And so if you have gear that keeps you out there, keeps you more comfortable, lets you enjoy yourself, like all those things are good. And that should be, a big reason why you're out there. So you're getting more ROI on your vacation. You're having fun. Your significant other, whatever that is, wife, or if the wives are hunting now, so if the husband's back at home, but like they know you're going to be safe. Like those are all good things. That's what technical clothing systems have kind of brought to the forefront. I mean, there's weather that people hunt in now that 20 years ago you'd have never been able to stay out there all day and hunt in, and now there's clothing that not only keeps you out there, but you're pretty doggone comfortable, and you can ultimately be successful. So those are all good things.
It's always funny when you hear from somebody who, and I get this periodically when I post a picture of me hunting or something. They say, well, if you wanted a real challenge, you'd be out there with a stick and an arrowhead that you made up with your own. I'm like, well, I'm also an apex predator, and any apex predator is going to use whatever tools at his disposal to tip the odds in his favor. Like, I'm not trying to go out there and prove anything to anybody. I'm doing what I want to do, what I find fulfillment and enjoyment in. And it doesn't make it it makes it maybe more comfortable, but it isn't easier to go stick an arrow through an animal at 50 yards just because I have the right clothing on, or because I happen to be using the newest compound bow that's out there.
Yeah, and people who don't hunt don't necessarily understand it, but like hunters love animals. Like we want to be around
Right.
animals. Like we respect animals. We kind of, I mean, that's our food source, right? And so we want these quick, clean, ethical kills. Quite frankly, technology has taken us away from, uh, spear points made of obsidian or whatever it is. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, I could do that, but that's not as good for the animal either, right? So it's kind of disingenuous argument. I mean, it's like, why don't I just put a spear on in a loincloth? It's like, come on,
Well,
man. Like
I mean, my
there's a
response to
limit.
that, is it any better than me going down to Walmart and picking up a pack of packaged beef that somebody else slaughtered for me? By the way, I don't
Yeah,
think there's anything wrong with that. But if you're going to make that argument, then you can't go to the grocery store and buy
correct.
beef, because
Yeah.
that's way easier than going out there in a loincloth and a spear.
Yeah. No, I don't, you know, hunting is basically a selective harvest. So you go out there and you get to, not you get to necessarily, but um, you ultimately the thing you shoot, you get to make that decision on. And so
Mm-hmm.
if it's a mature animal, that's up to you. If it's a cow, elk, whatever, that's up to you. But it's a selective harvest. It's not raising these things. And I don't have any problem necessarily with the beef industry at all, but but it's not raising these things kind of unnaturally and then slaughtering them wholesale. It's like, this is what I need for my family. I'm going to go shoot one bull elk a year, and that's going to be the end of it. And I can do that. And then, hey, listen, there have been lots of times I've come home and my wife's like, "Oh, did you harvest anything?" And I said, "No." And she goes, "Well, did you have an opportunity?" And I said, "Yes." I said, "But I'm the one that gets to make the decision about what I shoot. Nobody
Mm,
else gets to make that decision." And to me, that is, that's a powerful thing, right? It's like, no, I didn't. Sometimes I do it because it was too easy. I don't shoot because it was too easy. Sometimes I don't shoot because it's not the right animal. It's like it was too young, or like a cow with a calf. Like you don't want to do that.
right.
Whatever it is, right? You get to make that decision, and then you only take what you need, as opposed to, yeah, this industrial meat. But um, yeah, listen, if somebody wants to try to find a hole in your argument, they're gonna take some wild swings. But ultimately, human beings have been doing this for millions and millions and millions of years, and just to be able to be a part of that's pretty cool, in my opinion.
It is. And I wish more of us would get back to it. But there's also a beautiful responsibility in it too. When you go out into the field, it's not like, I mean, I told you the turkey story kind of worked out like this, but every other
Yeah,
hunt I've been on, it's not like you just go out and, like, oh, there's an animal and you shoot it from 400 yards and then it's like butchered into this perfect, you know, digestible, cuts or whatever. Like you have to go around and wander around for 5 days, and then you have to have practiced months beforehand to get everything dialed in and you're both sighted right. And then when and if you shoot an animal, then you got to go out and you got to break it down and you got to pack it back. And then when you get it back, you still have to even process it further, and then you have to cook it. There's just so much that the weight and the burden of responsibility is like, man, if I do this, there's a whole lot more to this than just shooting this animal. And if I do this, I'm in. Like, I committed. I'm all in, and I got a lot more work to do on this thing.
Yeah, no, the shot is actually when the easy part stops and the difficult part begins. I mean, really. So, but that part of the process, I think, should be talked about more as well. Because that's a pretty cool part. Like, it's a pretty special part, of that whole process that, at least at this point in my life, like, I cherish every one of those, even if it's painful to get them out, because, you never know when the next one's going to come, and you want to remember it. And, but anyways, I've maybe that's just with time that I've started to really, kind of enjoy that part of the process and really try to remember it, for what it is.
Well, and I can tell you some of the most memorable evenings that I've had here in Maine. Last year, when I brought some meat home, my wife and myself and my oldest son sat at our counter. It's like an island counter. And yep, we broke that meat apart. We grinded some up. We cut it down. My wife bought this camouflage, like, meat paper. We packaged it up. We taped it up. We were writing with a Sharpie marker. We put it in the freezer. Yep. And just that couple of hours that we spent together was fun. It was really enjoyable. We talked about different cuts of meat, and we, joked with each other, and it was just a great evening spent around a wholesome activity.
Yeah. And then every time you pull out a package of that meat and have that meal, like, those memories come back.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a cool thing. And like I said, it's pretty neat that more people are kind of coming, at least coming around to thinking about it or trying it out, and seeing what it's all about.
Definitely. Did you say it's your anniversary today, as in the day that we're recording this? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, 30 years my wife and I have been together.
Well, you said that, and I'm like, wait, did he mean like 30 years, or is in today is his anniversary for 30 years? So happy anniversary, man.
Yeah, no, man. So my wife did 28 years in the military. So it's not like, we've missed tons of birthdays and anniversaries and all kinds of, Christmases and stuff. And so it's not like I have to take the day off of work. And we're going to go celebrate a couple weeks from now, when kind of work and stuff are a little slower, but yeah, no, today is the day.
All right. Well, I was going to say, I feel pretty honored knowing that you're spending some time with me on that day, but
no doubt, dude.
I'm going to let you no problem and celebrate the importance of that milestone. But I just want to let you know, I appreciate you. And of course, our friendship and everything that you've done. You guys sent us some gear. I'm really excited to put that to the test here in the next, I think it's 3 weeks. So I'm going to put that stuff to the test. I anticipate I'll still be cold, but maybe less cold.
You live in Maine. How can you be cold?
I'm not adjusted. I've been here for a little over 2 years. I'm a desert rat, man, and I'm not adjusted to the Maine weather yet.
Wow.
Yeah, no, but it's all good. Where should the guys go? How should they connect with you? Obviously, send them to Sitka, wherever you want to send them, so they can learn more information about what we talked about today.
Yeah. So, like we'd mentioned, I work for Sitka Gear. They can find that online. My IG is at @JBarklow. I basically do a video a week, just talking about anything technical related due to outdoor activities, clothing, stoves, etc. And then I don't know if you know this, but in middle of August, right before I went into the bush for a week-long caribou hunt, I launched my website, knowledgefromstorms.com. So,
I don't think I knew that.
No, videos, YouTube page by the same name. So slowly building that out, building that platform out. It's kind of been a while in the making, but yeah, pretty excited about that and what it's going to become. But essentially, it's free online education. If you want to go outside and have a blast, that's a place to go.
Say it again. Knowledge from storms.
Knowledge from storms.
Okay.
So basically, knowledge built from tough experiences and a lot of time out in the mountains. And you know, what we talk about is not theory; it's actually vetted practical knowledge. So a lot of stuff
Excellent.
you won't hear get anywhere else. Um, Not necessarily because other people don't know it, but you know, the only other person I know that's that I would call my peer in this regard is Aaron Snyder. So he and I are
Mm,
good friends, but yeah, just trying to help people have a great, safe experience out there, no matter what they choose to do in the wilderness.
that's awesome. We'll sync it all up. Hopefully we can get some guys your way. I'm sure we will. I know a lot of guys are going to be interested in what we're talking about. So I'll link that all up so the guys know where to go. Appreciate you, brother. Thanks for joining us today.
Awesome. Yeah, Ryan, it was a great conversation. I'm glad we finally got to do it.
Yes, sir.